Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 2 of the EFL Magazine Business Podcast. Today I'm talking to Tim Thompson, and Tim has been working in the ELT industry in Korea for 20 years. He has taught at 3 universities and works with publishers, government ministries and research centres, major corporations and educational training centres to provide academic and professional skills training, teacher training, interview and language assessment services, proofreading and startup coaching. A popular conference teacher, Tim has been hosted by schools and organizations around the world for invited talks and longer training sessions. His website is timthompsonelt.com, and he also runs a freelancing business called Archer Consulting. I had a great chat with Tim. Hope you enjoyed.
Hey everyone, buckle up for a new episode of the EFL Magazine Business Podcast, the one and only podcast made to help you launch your business or take your existing business to a level of success you could never have imagined. Whether you're a school owner, freelancer, publisher, or other entrepreneur, you're sure to pick up lots of actionable advice when you listen to the EFL Magazine Business Podcast. Remember to visit eflmagazine.com for great articles and features. Without further ado, here's your host, the founder of EFL Magazine, Philip Pound.
So welcome back, everybody, to the latest episode of the EFL Magazine Business Podcast. We're really flying through them. Another great guest today, and we have Tim Thompson. And Tim is a freelancer and educational consultant, and his website is Tim Thompson ELT. That's THOMPSONELT.com. And hello, Tim.
Hi, good. Happy to be with you.
And tell me a little bit, you're in Korea at the moment?
Yes, 20 years in now. I've been here off and on for a long time. So about 20 plus years, and I'm in Daejeon. I've been in Daejeon since 2002.
Tell me about Daejeon for people who are not too familiar with Korea, or for those who are, what kind of place is it?
Central. It's in the middle of Korea. It's not fancy or has anything super famous, but if you know someone here, it's a nice place to visit, very comfortable, and a good place to stop if you're heading down south from Seoul, which everyone seems to stay in Seoul. But if you're coming down south, Daejeon's a great place to stop. Give me a shout and I can give you some recommendations if you're coming in.
Okay. And how is life in Korea at the moment with the COVID situation? I'm trying not to ask so much because unless it's kind of specific to a country. So I haven't spoken to anyone in Korea yet. So I realize this may, if somebody listens to this podcast in a year or 2 years, it may be interesting history. But yeah, how are things there at the moment?
Up and down, it's we have a couple good weeks or a couple bad weeks or a good month or two and then a not good month or two. So I think right now we're hopefully coming out of kind of a down bad period, and hopefully things will open up a bit more. But since it's the end of January, we've got to worry about school starting again. I think it starts a little bit different than it does in Japan. So we're looking at the start of a new school year coming up, and the big decision will be for universities as well as public schools. Do you continue online or do you go back face-to-face and risk that? But online also has its own demerits, I guess you could say. So it's going to be tricky for the policymakers. I do not envy them.
And as regards day-to-day, are restaurants open?
These days you can go and sit in a coffee shop. Certainly mask off to eat. No one bats an eye. But with the city where I live, I would say 90% of the people walking down the street or even going for a hike, you're going to see them wearing a mask.
Yeah.
Which I guess is good.
Yeah, it is. So it's more or less the same as Tokyo, really. We've kind of cut back on hours. So I think most things finish at 8 p.m. now, or should do. And yeah, the school's the same. It's really up in the air as to what's going to happen. Is going to be online or at home or some kind of hybrid model. I think the students are enjoying it because they are supposed to be watching some videos, but I don't think they're watching them of, the
I think it
teachers
does
send the
help with
video.
the stress levels, but it
Mm,
sort of creates a different kind of stress because you don't have the contact with your friends that you're used to. My daughter's middle
mm.
school now, and so she enjoys the enjoyable parts and complains about the less fun parts.
So yeah, but everybody is connected online. If this had happened, what, 25, 30 years ago?
No, I can't imagine.
Yeah. Wow. That would be yeah, we're just living in a time of hyper connectivity and yeah. So let me move on a little bit to how you got to Korea. What's your background, Tim? Where are you from originally?
From Lexington, Kentucky in the States.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I did a couple of study abroad years in high school and in university and really enjoyed that. So when I saw an advertisement saying, would you like to go teach in South Korea? I thought this could be a similar way to do a year in another country while getting paid. And it kind of stuck.
Mm. Mm. And that was 20 years ago.
Yes, I first came and lived in the southern part of South Korea down in Jeonju, 96 to 98.
Oh, okay.
Then, yeah, it was a while back. Then I went home for a while and missed it. So I came back in 2002.
I'm not sure if you're familiar with Michael Palin's documentaries in the 1980s, early 90s, where he traveled around the world. And one I was watching last week actually on Korea, and this was probably early 90s. I think, things would have moved on in 98, but, we didn't have the connectivity and we didn't have K-pop and all the Korean soft power around the world. So Korea back then seemed exotic to me. In 1990.
I can see that.
Yeah. How did you feel coming to Korea? Was it very different? Was it a culture shock for you? Or?
Well, the southern part's traditionally a bit more conservative, and Jeonju is not a small city, but not a big city either. So again, it was fairly conservative. There was still sort of a ban on Japanese cultural imports at that time.
Okay.
So
Yes. Yeah.
Getting a sneaky ex-Japan CD was a very big deal at the time. Everyone had pagers when I first arrived, and then I remember transitioning into cell phones. That was a fun time.
Wow, yeah,
pagers. You have to go to a public phone and answer someone's call that you got on your pager. So that was the old days.
Pager, beeper, are they the same thing?
Yeah, beep.
Yeah,
I think it was called is how we Koreanized it. We called it a beepy.
Okay. So you started, and where did you start? Did you start in university?
No, I paid my dues. Come on now.
Okay.
I suffered through a year in a language school with split shifts, 6:40 or 7:40 a.m. starts and 9 or 10 p.m. finishes. All levels, adults, middle school, high school, children, everything. I had every book. I had every level. Often in the same day. It was really trial by fire. I had maybe one day of training. They sort of said, follow this other teacher around and watch what they do, and good luck. But yeah, I learned a ton. Obviously, it was a very productive year. And then I went to the university in that city for the second year in Jeonju, and then things didn't quite work out the way I wanted. So I went back home for a while, and then came back and worked at two different unis until I started this company.
Okay, so that's a nice segue. We'll move on to your starting your company. So you made a break away from English language teaching. Why?
Well, I like teaching. I liked and still like the idea of teaching, but when you work at a university or you work inside a department, there are certain rules, there are certain management people and management styles that they usually transition every couple of years, and so you really don't know what you're going to get. But midway through the second university job here in Daejeon, I sort of found myself enjoying the side projects that I was doing more than the actual job itself. And I worked for maybe one of the bigger name schools in Korea, which helped a lot as far as opportunities to do other things. But, you get a call that say, can you come in and, sit in on these interviews and we'll pay you for that? Or can you come in and speak to this group of teachers and we'll pay you for that? Or, come in and can you check this editing thing? Or can you help this person prepare for a big interview? And so like that was real. I enjoyed doing that quite a bit, but then the
Mm,
school felt like they needed to crack down and say, no, that's not why you're here. You need to focus on this, that, or the other. And so
mm,
eventually, I started planning, I don't want to say my escape, but planning my transition into this. So anyone who's listening and thinking about transitioning on after university teaching, I would say start your planning quite early.
mm,
I think I started maybe 2 years before I actually left the beautiful salaried position.
mm. Yeah. So I can understand somebody working in a language school. The money's not so hot, and you want to get out. The hours are long, and maybe unthankful sometimes. But university teaching in Japan, maybe in Korea as well, it's quite okay. You've got in some cases it's a pension position. You've got paid
Yeah,
holidays, and it's
I do
difficult
miss
to
paid
leave.
holidays. Yeah.
Yeah. Is it difficult to leave? What was it a difficult decision for you, or
I put it this way, 5
hmm,
years in, no regrets.
okay, gotcha. Looking back, no regrets, but at the
Right.
time, I'm sure it was.
Well, just like your income as a freelancer, your feelings also roller coaster up and down, and you go through a myriad of emotions depending on how things are going at that moment. Obviously,
Mm,
the last year of COVID prevented me from doing a lot of the kind of things that I would normally do.
hmm
And I do tend to travel quite a bit and go give talks and meet different people in other countries. And that was put to the side.
mm,
So, yeah, this last year was challenging, but I guess the positive way to look at it is that I came out and still did okay financially and you turned,
okay.
met some new clients and things happened that were good.
Mm. Okay, so you've left university, you've made the break. It's not such a difficult decision for you, and you decide to. How do you make a decision? Was it the side projects that you were doing in university? You found that they were the most enjoyable, and you said, "Yeah, let's do my own thing and focus on that."
That was the goal, obviously, was
Mm.
to try to then build or increase on the number of side projects or the frequency of side projects, or tell some of the people I was working on those projects with, hey, I can do more, or we can turn this into something steady, or I'm here, I'm available. So that was a big thing. So obviously, while we're talking, I'm going to use the word networking quite a few times because that's
Okay. Mm.
critical. It is critical to success if you're going to start your own business or freelancing company. Yeah.
Mm. And so you started your freelance company, and can we have a quick plug for your company? What's your company called?
It's called Archer Consulting.
Hmm.
I chose that because I liked the idea of precision that archery entails, and actually Korean Olympic team, one of their strongest events
Ah.
is archery. So I thought that would
Mm.
be a good match for the local cultural side of it here as well.
Mm. Isn't there some guy? He's legally blind, but he's an archer. He's Korean guy, isn't he?
I don't know about that. That sounds
Yeah.
like maybe, one of the other, I don't know what you call it these days, Paralympics or something like that. But their
Yeah.
men's and women's teams are very strong and usually
Mm.
quite well in the
Mm.
Summer Olympics.
Mm. Mm. So you got into freelancing. So we're going to talk a little bit about what you do. So presenting, academic writing, is that right? That's
Lots of stuff. So
yeah.
here, let me tell you the good side of what I do and the bad side of what I do.
Mm-hmm.
The good side is there's tons of variety. You can't get bored because I get to do a lot of different things.
Okay.
In a typical day, obviously there's some editing jobs will come in. So it could be something from a huge 30-page academic paper to a short email. I have different clients that will have different requests.
Okay.
In normal times, I do a lot more face-to-face teacher training or special lectures, but those I wouldn't say have dried up totally, but it's very hard. I had one canceled that was supposed to be going on right now, actually. There was a 3-week thing that got canceled kind of at the last minute because they were scared of COVID stuff.
Mm.
I get called in to be an interviewer for different, English interviews and level test type things.
Okay.
Things that, I had was an IELTS examiner, and so that made me more qualified to do those sort of things. I'll get called down to a government research center or a private company to go in and do writing training or presentation skills training for them. If you're looking for more avenues for income, you can write a book. You can be a MC or conference presider. And then I've had some really weird, fun things come in, like a university in Vietnam was trying to start a new program and they wanted people to come in and give some ideas. Or when we had the Winter Olympics here, I had a company that was making some new sort of recycling thing, and they wanted someone who could help explain it to different people. So I think what they call us a scientific communicator or something like that.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
And I got to go to Kazakhstan a couple of years ago and sort of consult on different English related things for them. I was there for a month. Really cool opportunities come up. So I would say this also, like if your listeners are thinking about trying to do these kinds of things, the two main things are, one, you need to sort of have a way to show that you're qualified / experienced.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other key thing is to be available. Because, when you work for a university and someone says, can you come here for a week? Their answer is going to be like, well, no, I've got to teach my classes. I can't just run off for a week. Where that's my advantage. So I'm like, yeah, sure. I'm not doing anything. No problem.
So when you first started your freelancing business, you had some clients already while you were teaching, and you just quit the teaching job, or how?
Well, yeah, like I said, I mean, I was planning this for a couple of years. So certainly in the last year, when I pretty much made a decision, this was going to be my last 1-year contract or last, finish up this 2-year contract. I can't remember which one it was. I started reaching out to people and saying, hey, I'm going to be available. We should talk about some things. And yeah, a couple of them actually said, okay, let's start something up. Or some people I was working with said, let's continue this. And then, obviously you use social media and you let people know what you're doing. And then, I actually had some friends do me some favors and recommend me for a couple of positions and opportunities. So really, yeah. Then again, networking, we're back to networking again.
Yeah. Yeah. So you had some business coming in, and you weren't shy about getting yourself out there and asking the questions. And
no, you can't be. You can't assume that people will just, speak for you. You need to go out there and speak for yourself.
So that's for some of our listeners that may be looking to transition from university teaching or just be involved in this world in some way as an entrepreneur in the ELT world. Give me some tips on networking. First of all, let's say online or in person, or if you go to whatever trade fair conference. What's the Tim Thompson lowdown on networking?
Let's start with the online stuff, because everyone thinks that they need to maybe advertise, and I am not a big fan of that, and I'll tell you why. Especially for something like editing. There's a lot of competition out there. There's places all over the world that might do it quite a bit cheaper, or, certainly there are places that are probably even more qualified than what I am. But when you advertise, what happens is you get a lot of requests for quotes, which means everyone's looking for the cheapest price. Whereas if people hear about you word of mouth, then generally they're looking for more quality over cost savings. And especially when your clients now are government research centers that already have a budget, universities that already have a pretty good budget, that's not going to be the issue for them. For them, they're going to want quality. So when someone says, look, I've worked with this guy, I know this guy, I know what he can do, you should call him. The whole mentality of this transaction is different than if you said, hey, person, I don't know, what's your price? Oh, yeah, that's a little bit high, because they don't know what you do. They don't know about your service, and you don't have a personal recommendation. So that's for the online stuff.
Okay.
Now, I'll tell you a story, because stories are fun in podcasts. I'll tell you a story. A couple, I guess, maybe the year after I started going out on my own, you don't have a lot of clients at first. So you tend to spend a lot of time thinking, oh my God, did I do the right thing? And I was playing around on Google Flights one day, and I saw this pretty cheap flight to Istanbul. And I mean, it was super cheap. And I was like, okay, boom. And I bought it. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go to Istanbul. I don't know anyone in Istanbul. And I reached out on Facebook and I said, does anyone know someone in ELT in Istanbul? And a friend who was living in Japan at the time said, actually, yeah, you should contact this person.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, all right. So I contacted this person, sent them an email and said, this person suggested I contact you. I'm going to be in town. Would you like me to come and talk to your students? I do this sometimes. And she was like, absolutely. That'd be great. Went to talk to the students. I think it was about presenting or something. And then she told a friend, hey, this guy's in town. You should get him. So I went to her university as well. 6 months later, they're having a big conference and they invite me to come back. And I went 3 or 4 years in a row.
Wow.
So again, it comes to qualified, available, networking. All these words come back, but you just need an opportunity to prove yourself. And the way to get your foot in the door somewhere is one, well, do it for free. And then two, have someone who knows them personally recommend you. And then you never know what's going to happen. All sorts of fun things can happen after that.
And ask.
Sure. I mean, again, what's the worst thing they can say, right? No, thank you. Okay. No big deal.
And I think that's, I don't know if it's particularly a problem in this industry. My background is not just in this industry, but I do get quite a few emails from people, and I'm probably mentioned this on another podcast, and they send me materials, they send me PDFs, but they never actually tell me what they want. You know, this situation, people will send you something, they send you a link. And to be honest, because I get them, I don't reply, because if the person said, will you do this? Would you be up for that? I'd probably answer. But I would say 95% don't.
And probably they also don't do a really good job of selling what the benefit is. Like, do you have this problem? This can help people, or the people you're connected to, or your audience with this problem. What do you think? That's one thing. But I wonder if, I think in our industry, there's a bit of imposter syndrome as well, because it can be a little bit easy, at least in the olden days, for sure. You could walk in here with just a basic college degree in almost anything and get a job. So I think maybe imposter syndrome is one of the reasons for that people think, oh, this probably isn't that very good. And they don't believe in the quality of what they're offering.
That's it's the third podcast we've talked about imposter syndrome. I've spoken last week, Rachel Roberts, who's a therapist and coach in the UK, and also today I was talking to Miranda Crowhurst, and they all mentioned imposter syndrome. So,
yeah, no surprise.
Yeah, and that's one thing they had to overcome. Did you experience that yourself?
Sure. Certainly when I transition more into editing, because, while I think I do a pretty good job, I know there are people that have a lot more training or much better qualifications or more experience. They may have 20 years of experience under their belt. Yeah, it's hard to think, oh gosh, well, what if they ever contacted those people? I'm sure they'd be much better than I am. But, all you can do is do your best and try to communicate well with your clients, and do things in a reasonable amount of time, and be honest with your billing, and all the things like that. You can just do your best.
And you just mentioned your clients, so that's a nice little segue. Keeping clients happy. Yeah,
well, they're all different, right? It's like having a house full of pets. You love them all, but they're all going to have different needs and different ways of working with you and interacting with you. So yeah, I have clients that are not afraid to send me a message at 10:30 p.m. at night. I have clients that think, yeah, well, why shouldn't I send him this on the weekend? Surely he can sneak that in and get it done. Then I have clients that are very, very like almost apologetic for sending something in the middle of the day. Oh, I'm sorry about sending this, but can you do this within 2 weeks? And you're like, yeah, it's going to take 5 minutes, no problem. So clients are all different, because people are all different. So the way that maybe that they've interacted with people before, or they get treated by their coworkers or bosses, maybe influences that. It's really hard to say, but their variety is the word of how clients appear to me. And yeah, some that I work with almost on a daily basis, and then there's some I don't hear from for 6 months, and then they pop in like, hey, how have you been? Can you do this? So it's fun. It's interesting.
And managing client expectations is really important. I learned this lesson when I worked for online recruitment company, and just like you with client expectations, personalities, all different. You could run one ad for one company. You could hire 15 people perfectly matched for a role. You ask the client, how did you feel about the service? It was okay. You could advertise another role. They would hire nobody. And they say, oh yeah, we really like your site. We want to sign up for 2 years or whatever. So, it's same, isn't it?
Sure. And yeah, the word matching is a great word, because whether you're doing a job interview or you're trying to make your professor happy when you're a student, all those matching is the key there. Matching requirements, matching expectations, matching what they're looking for. I've been turned down for jobs that I just didn't match with what they were looking for. And I get that, and I could just leave and say, yeah, I'm not the right person for this job and be okay with that. But, and funny thing is, when I got the university job that I left before starting this company, it was because I had a friend working there who said, look, they're going to ask you if you like teaching writing. And I said, I don't like teaching writing. He goes, yeah, I know, but you need to tell them you're excited about the opportunity to teach writing if you want to get hired.
Okay.
And so again, hashtag networking, but also like their expectations were, we want someone who can come in and teach writing classes. Sure, I could also teach business English classes or presentation skills classes like I wanted to, but I had to say that I was interested in teaching writing classes. And I'm glad I did, because I learned a lot, and that helped me with other opportunities in the future, saying, oh yes, I've taught academic writing and I've taught, scientific research writing and things like that. That really helped out my career. But yeah, if I had been honest and walked into the interview and said, yeah, that's not really my thing, I would much prefer to do X, Y, and Z, I wouldn't have gotten the job. I wouldn't have matched with what they were looking for.
Very good tip there. So NB, everybody that's listening, has to, match what the client is looking for, because, just one wrong word or, for one thing that they're exactly looking for, you're like, you're gone. And it mightn't matter, how good you are.
Well, that's the thing with interviews, right? Interviews are very competitive. So they're almost looking for a reason to say no,
yes,
as much as they're looking for a reason to say yes, because maybe they're interviewing 5 people and can only hire 1 or 2. As soon as you give them a reason to say there's the door, well, you're done. So how do you feel about this? That's not really my thing. Okay, cool. Door, next.
And how in Korea, this is something I'm interested in. I lived in China, so I know quite a few people who had ELT businesses in China, and they went with a needs analysis for the clients, for the customers. And I don't know, in China, people don't really do needs analysis. They don't, complete certain things. They don't like this sort of interviews, the needs. How is it in Korea? Are they pretty happy with a needs analysis? It's not a problem.
I wouldn't say it's a foreign concept, but I would say a lot of people would be like, why are we wasting time on this? Let's just get to work. Quick. Get to it. So I think a lot of people would see that as, look, just do what I want, or just do it the way I want you to do it, or just do what and they wouldn't want to prepare. They would just sort of like things to flow, and then they'll work them out as they happen.
Okay. Interesting for anybody working in Korea. Is there, what challenges are there for someone from the US in Korea? I don't know very much about Korean culture, but
well, the visa is a big deal.
Okay.
Unlike Japan, your employer, for many people, dictate your visa. So they have a lot of control. And then a lot of people would move over, say, to a marriage visa. And then it was easier before, but still now you can then transition to sort of a green cardy permanent residence visa, which is what I did. So that's why I was able to start my company, because I'm on a permanent residency visa. If I was still on a teaching visa, I wouldn't have been able to do that legally.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh. Okay.
They have a lot of control.
And, dealing with clients, meetings, etc. What sort of advice can you give for people working in Korea or
If you're coming over, be prepared for meetings, regardless of whether they need to, lasting either 30 minutes or an hour. Like they like, and it's funny because you'll go in and you start talking to someone, and then maybe after 30 minutes, they look at you like, okay, well, it's time to go, right? Or like things just stretch and stretch and stretch, and you feel like you're wasting time until you get to an hour, and they're like, okay, now we can be done. So I noticed that a lot, is the sort of like the expectation of, well, surely you're going to be free for the next 30 minutes. You planned for this, right? It's like, well, we could have done this in 5, but I mean, okay, if we need to drink the coffee and make the small talk, well, so be it. So then, of course, we could talk for an hour about taxes. I'd prefer not to, but certainly your tax obligations in both places are going to be something that someone needs to learn about if you're going to start a business over here.
Okay.
Especially.
Yeah, as Americans, you still have to pay tax, don't you, if you're living
at least
abroad?
File, yeah. I think if we're under $107,000 a year, which don't worry about that, I am. Then you sort of file and you get your exemption. But if you start making over that, well, first of all, good for you, buddy. But then you do need to then start paying taxes on top of that.
Wow, don't have to worry about that, thankfully. So let's go back to networking. So we talked a little bit about social media. So you go to a conference, trade fair. What do you do? Do you work the floor? Are you kind of, I won't use the word schmoozing, but how can you network without appealing to needy or too schmoozy or just boring people with your pitch?
Certainly, when you go to a conference, one of the keys is going to be either you present and then you talk to people who ask questions or stay after about what you're doing because they're obviously interested. But then certainly choosing the right presentation to go to, and then going and then being the person that says, hey, I really liked what you had to say. Have you thought about collaborating on this? Or, are you interested in doing something with that? Or could you tell me a little bit more about that? So the sort of targeted networking, or, hopefully, a few people, and then those few people can introduce you to a few more people is a good way to do that as well.
So have a presentation.
I mean, if you don't have something to talk about, if you're just going to the conference to try to pounce on people, I think that's going to be kind of obvious to a lot of people. And having something to share, I think, makes it a little bit more reasonable to be there. That's just my opinion.
Knows. So we talked about networking. Now, different income streams. So you've got a lot of stuff going on. Tell me about that.
Well, certainly in the last year, the face-to-face training opportunities, whether it be going down and helping people at a huge conglomeration work on their presentation skills, or going to a research center and helping them, get their papers published. Those things were not out there in 2020, at least for me. So luckily, I had a couple connections that they were able to help me get more editing clients. And so I did a lot of editing in 2020. And so that was really good, is that, it didn't totally dry up when the big money training opportunities did. And the face-to-face interviewing, that was few and far between. There's still a few with masks, but I, you know how it is. You sit at home in your pajamas and do editing. And I did that quite a bit in last year.
Okay.
In the beginning of this year.
So because you have a diversified income stream, you can kind of move over into one area if another area is not.
And, if you go into editing, even if you go into editing, there's so many different types of editing, There's certainly the proofreading, and then there's more, content copy editing, and there's a lot of different things. You can work with different translators who do translations, and you do sort of back end, editing and proofreading for them. Companies, universities, I'm thinking about who some of my clients are. Like there's a variety of individual people to government, to the tertiary education, to research. There's a lot of people that need, whatever they're producing in written form to be checked and improved. And again, if you know someone who knows someone, generally you can get your foot in the door. But otherwise, if they have an internal group of editors, which some places do, then you don't want to waste your time with that because they already pay people to do that. But the sort of medium-sized ones are often looking for someone freelance to come in and help them when they need help.
Okay. So how do you feel about working? You work from home?
With these, 90% of the time, yes.
So that brings its own challenges, doesn't it? I mean, as regards motivation, to be able to discipline yourself and schedule your day. Tell me a little bit about that, how you work from home.
Yeah, that was certainly a transition. I mean, I was lucky to have, I guess, a private office in the university job I had before this. So, it wasn't like I missed a bullpen environment. But yeah, just being able to go next door or down the hall or upstairs to talk to some coworkers or meet them for lunch, that dried up, obviously. And so you have to find different ways to keep your social circle. And, it's funny. I'm certainly happy to have the clients that I have, but I'll tell you, I have some big clients that I've never met face to face.
Oh,
and I'm sure that can freak people out too. It's really funny. If I met them for the first time, it'd be like hanging out with an old friend because we talk all the time online. But I have clients in Russia and different parts of Korea, and I've just never met them.
Yeah, I think that's familiar. Anybody who's worked in, sales or especially now with online, I'm sure I'll probably never meet a lot of people I know. It's that's part and parcel of the job. So how do you define success? What's success for you? What's your work-life balance, and what brings you satisfaction in your job?
Sometimes I like to joke and say that I'm retired because, you don't have the 9 to 5 and you more or less choose how much work you want to do. I'm probably could do a little bit more than I'm doing, but I could probably choose to do less as well. And there are busy times, but you know what? I mean, I think I could see myself being in my 60s and still kind of doing what I'm doing now. But I love having the option to be able to say no. And that's one of the key benefits to freelancing is being able to tell someone, yeah, no, I'm not available. You wouldn't say I'm not interested. You would say I'm not available for that. And, the thing is, when you freelance, you can take on a big project, but if you take on a bigger one, sometimes you have to say no to some smaller ones in the meantime because, of time management or you do have to be on site for something. So if I go up to Seoul for something that's going to take 3 days, if something else pops up in the middle down here, I just can't do it. But success, I think, is choice. Having the choice to be able to say yes or no. And basically, if you do have a relationship clash or a personality clash with one of your clients, if it's with your boss at your full-time job, you're sort of stuck. Whereas if it's with a client, you can pass them on, refer them, or just say, look, this isn't working for me. So I hope you need to find someone else. It's not firing them, but it's sort of a breakup.
And why do you say no? What are some of the reasons you say no? One is maybe you get, as you mentioned, you get a better, more lucrative contract, maybe longer term contract. But are there other reasons why you say no?
I think that, if you don't feel like you're the right person for a job, for example, and I've tried some materials writing projects, gotten my foot wet in that area, and they just kept kicking it back and going, yeah, that's not what we were looking for. And I'm like, well, man, I can't read your mind. You say these very loose guidelines, and then I try to get creative and I send something to them and they're like, yeah, no, not that. I'm like, could you be more specific? They're like, no, well, okay. That's not the kind of project that I'm looking for. I feel like I'm beating my head against the wall.
Yeah.
And so I didn't enjoy that, and I probably wouldn't take on too many more of those unless they were very specific or said, here are some examples, do it like this. Okay, that's cool. But when they say, hey, man, just get in the creative groove and produce some things, and then you do that and they're like, yeah, no, that's not what we had in mind. That's very frustrating.
Yeah. And I think we've all been there, haven't we? So you have the luxury of being able to say, no.
Yeah, I'm going to pass on this one. I've done that and it felt great.
And how important, so we talked about imposter syndrome. Another thing that entrepreneurs starting out, they find difficulty with is saying no, because people want to take on all this stuff and say, they get so many offers. So can you give any tips to our listeners on saying no? How to say no? I mean, it's easy, isn't it? Just say no, but some people find it difficult.
You can say no when you're in a financially decent place. So obviously having a financial cushion, you don't want to leave that salaried job that you're getting that regular paycheck unless you feel like you've got, your little mountain of money you can have for emergencies, right? So you've got to have that cushion, the financial cushion of, some people say 3 months, some people say 6 months, and some people say more of what you need to have, that if things go very lean or, you get hurt or there's some family emergency back home, that you can still survive for X number of months, right? So being able to say no, if you're living paycheck to paycheck, which in this case is like month to month, you really can't say no because you're like, I got to eat, So when something comes up that's too good to pass up, it's really hard to say no. But when, if you know that you've got a couple more papers that you're going to work on, or, something's coming up next month that's going to be really lucrative, then it's easier to say no now. Plus, here's the thing, this job, like what I do, there's a lot of seasonality to it. This month in particular, traditionally over the past 5 years, has been a slower month because a lot of my clients are just getting into their new budgets and sort of just coming off some holidays, and there's another holiday coming up next month. Things really will start to pick up again late February, early March. So knowing that when something comes up now, it's harder to say no because there's not much else you're doing. Whereas if it was in that March, April period where things usually start to pick up, it's easier to say no because there's going to be some other things that people will need you for.
So there's an excellent tip to our listeners. We're speaking to Tim Thompson from timthompsonelt.com and Archer Consulting in Korea, is have some savings. I interviewed Tyson Batino from OneCoin English a number of days ago, and he said exactly the same thing. He had some savings in place. He had that leeway, the luxury, and the security as well to fall back on through budget. Have you always been a budgeter, or is it moving to Korea has instilled this discipline into you?
No, I'd say I've always been fairly watchful. I remember when I was 18, I got my first sort of pre-approved credit card. In the mail, and I'm a college kid. I've got no job, and I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. And I remember my dad saying, never spend more than you can pay that month, because it's their money, not your money. So like, use it very carefully. And I took that to heart, and I've been trying to be very careful, and not ever put more on a credit card than I can pay off at that one time. And again, I wanted to have several months of stashed away money that was liquid in case nobody called that month. And, in the first year or two, you never know. Like now I feel better about things because I have some steady clients, but that first year, especially, I was, curious to see how it would work out. Funny story. My dad actually confessed in the last couple of years that he gave me 6 months before I went back and applied for another university job.
But he didn't tell you that at the time, of course.
Not at the time, but he confessed it later. And he's like, because I'd never had to do that. So I have no idea what it entailed. And he was, of course, proud and impressed that I worked it out. But it was kind of funny to have him admit that later. He's like, yeah, I gave you 6 months.
Does he come from business? Is he a company employee or?
Nope, educator.
Oh, okay. So I sometimes if you come from an entrepreneurial family, it's an advantage, isn't it? That you get that mentoring, and the expectation is completely different, and the attitude to risk, isn't it?
Yeah, you can hear their war stories. No, I didn't really have sort of a mentor for this.
Mm. Okay, and why did you always have an entrepreneurial kind of, we won't say gene, but an entrepreneurial itch that you want to do your own thing? Is it the freedom that is very much a motivation for you?
Yes, that was a big thing. I did study business in undergrad. So I did do marketing and management as my undergrad majors and then did my master's in TESOL later. But no, I've always been curious about the business side of things. But no, the reason I left, I don't want to say cushy, but I left the stable university environment was just being able to have more control. So again, when you have a manager who shows you all the wrong things to do, you sort of go, you know what? I want to be in a position where I can leave when I'm not happy. And that's where freelancing appealed to me.
And tell me about some mistakes you've made. not in your work, but in your business, and I shouldn't have done that, or if I were to advise somebody, this is what I would say.
Well, I'm not sure they're going to be something that would translate to everyone else, but certainly there were a couple of times where I took these aren't mistakes, but I do remember, for example, doing some work for free, with some volunteer organizations, and doing work with volunteer organizations can take up way too much of your time. But the good thing about doing that is you can generally get some experience that you're not qualified for, because they're just happy to have someone to do it. But then with that experience, you can transition that into working with another company. So for example, I worked with the magazine for the English teaching organization here, so that when I tried to work with a larger, print thing, I said, "Oh yeah, well I've done editorial work with them," and they went, "Oh, okay, that qualifies you." But if you give too much free work and take on responsibility, that can actually count against you later when you're trying to get paid work.
Good point. And there are some people out there that will take advantage of free work. They'll want more and more free work. There's a lot of takers.
They'll lay the guilt trip on you and say, "Look, no one can do this like you can. Wow, we really need your experience and expertise here. Or you started this, we really need you to finish it." And yeah, when you have a regular source of income, it's easier to be like, "Yeah, you know what? Okay, fair enough." But when you're scraping by, that's not something that's going to help you out.
No. So in the earlier podcast with Miranda Crowhurst, we talked a little bit about, social responsibility, corporate social responsibility, but I wouldn't class you as corporate, Tim, but as regards social responsibility in your business, how do you, using the American phrase, pay it back or pay it forward? What do you do?
I like mentoring. I'm happy to do some mentoring, especially with younger people. Yeah, I've gone out and given some free talks because I don't want to say it's a favor, but I respect what someone's doing and they don't have a budget, and go into a foreign language high school and give a talk just because you want to help those kids out, things like that. But yeah, obviously, again, there's so many hours in a day and you can't do too much of that. But yeah, or I had a friend at a university ask if I could, come and talk to their students online. I mean, yeah, it's an hour out of my day. No big deal. I can do that. So yeah, I'm happy to do something like that if I think it's going to have a positive outcome or benefit to someone.
Okay. And tell me about forming a company in Korea. What are the options? What are the, what's the...
Scary easy, actually.
Yeah.
Scary
easy.
Really? Yeah. Basically, I went to the tax office and I told them I was doing something that was basically service oriented and basically online for the most part. And said, I want to be legit. And they said, okay, give us your address and a description of what you're doing and the name of it. And they gave me a little certificate, and I had a business.
Oh, really?
with the
Oh.
tax obligation. Yeah. So
Mm.
they were happy to do that. They're like, oh, you're going to pay taxes. Great. But yeah, I mean, now I have a company. Now, if I wanted to have a brick and mortar language school or something, that would have been a bit more difficult. That would have involved leases and different kind of company registration. And, when you hire people, that's a whole nother thing. Luckily, I work by myself, so I don't have to worry about that. I keep it small, I keep it streamlined, so I don't have to worry about that. But, sponsoring another foreign person's visa would have been a big hassle, or trying to explain to them where my brick and mortar, and then I have a lease, or I bought it, or I'm renting, like that gets really, really tricky. So online, streamlined, is just going down to the tax office and getting a piece of paper. So that way, when I'm working with a larger company and they want to pay me, with VAT, for example, then I've got the tax number, and I've learned how to do the forms online for that. So that really helped out.
Okay, so not so difficult. As regards the ease of doing business, where is Korea? Starting a business and running it. Is it like in the top 10, or is it
you're going to need
mid-table?
some language, proficiency / help, because not all, there's still a lot of tax stuff that there's no English really website for, or when you call the English hotline, they're like, yeah, well, we can't help you with the website. We don't know how to do that. So that's interesting. But again, when you're doing English related stuff, a lot of the people you're going to be dealing with are probably going to be Koreans who speak a decent amount of level of English. So that makes things a lot easier. There's going to be some contact at almost every company you go to that's going to be their foreigner wrangler, so you can, they'll be the one to meet you at the door, like, hey, how's it going? And then like, we'll help you with some tricky stuff working with some of the other people in the company.
That's a good point. If you work in the ELT world, you're generally going to work with people who can use English. So maybe it's not such, language is not such a barrier as maybe other industries.
No, if you worked in, construction or something like that, you're going to need a quite fluent level of Korean to get by, whereas I honestly don't.
Okay. And how your research and let's say books that you read on entrepreneurship and running a company, running a business, what kind of study do you do?
Well, I've certainly enjoyed reading different books about starting companies, but no one really knows what you're trying to do specifically, and no one's going to write a book that specific that's going to match with what you're trying to do, especially when you're doing it in a foreign country. So you can get general ideas and tips, especially for working with clients or telling people about what you do. But no, you really need, well, that's why I wanted to come on this podcast and talk to your listeners, is to try to give specific examples for people trying to get into a specific situation. So I think the niche of you working with EFL Magazine puts us in the ELT genre. And then, me working in Korea, I can give specific examples about that. So when you put it together, there's probably, hopefully, a couple people out there that are looking to do something pretty similar. And this will be more helpful than reading a book of, how to start your own company in 30 days or something like that.
Yeah, I hope so. There is a kind of a common thread among the podcasts I've done, and one was, of course, having a budget and having some savings. That seems to be, but not always. I've had a couple of guests, and they were Ian Simpson. He won't mind me saying, because it is on the podcast. He was 15K UK in debt when he started his business. So, I suppose that's just supports what you're saying is. It's business. You can't really, nobody knows everything about it, and it's unique, and especially in this situation, the COVID situation, who knows? Everything's out the window. So, as regards COVID and education and your business for the future, over the next year, you're still working away, and how do you think the business landscape will look for you post-COVID?
Well, I'm hopeful. I'm positive, because I think that when we're able to do more face-to-face things, I'm going to get phone ringing off the hook is what I'm hoping is going to happen. So if I can keep the editing clients happy and add more face-to-face work, I think I'm going to be sitting pretty, but when we're there, I don't
Hmm.
know. It's hard to say because we haven't seen a single vaccine over here yet in Korea.
Oh, really?
Not yet.
Oh.
I think the government sort of took let's see how other people do it, or let's see if we can develop our own local one first. And I don't think either one of those really lends itself towards going ahead and pre-ordering and getting them on the shore. They're not here yet.
Hmm. What words of advice can you give to somebody who wants to start a freelancing business or business in general? They want to make that leap, and maybe they have a few fears around being an entrepreneur, the uncertainty.
Yeah, they should.
They should do it.
No, well, they should have fears and
Oh.
concerns and worries too, because you never know what it's going to be like. You don't know what it's going to be like until you get into it. Someone could, be stringing you along going, oh yeah, no, we'll definitely work together. That guy down at the pub that's like, oh yeah, we should work together sometime. And you're like, okay, well, I got him. And then, you quit your job and you're like, so you ready? He's like, yeah, maybe in 6 months. And oh goodness, I wasn't expecting that. But again, no regrets for me, but maybe that's because it worked out. But if you don't have the right professional network, and I tell this to my university students back in the day, when they say, "Oh, professor, can I get a recommendation letter?" It's like, okay, if no one's going to speak up for you, if no one's going to put their stamp, their endorsement on you, then you're going to have a hard time. But if people, I've got friends, I've never seen them in the classroom, so it's really hard to say what they're like as an educator. Good friends down at the pub, but I don't really know what they're like. So again, you can have people that say that they will endorse you, but until they really have worked with you or know what you do, that could be a hard thing to ask. So certainly, you have to ask yourself, how much do I want to audition? Do I want to do a free paper or a discounted paper before I do a full fee paper? Do I want to go give someone a free presentation or short, lecture to show them what I can do so that when a paid opportunity comes up, they think of me? But here's what I would suggest is to try to do those free things in that time period as you're planning to leave your full-time paid salary job, right? Where you don't really need the money. So try to get some of those auditions in early so that when you do need the income, you've already got people that know what you can do.
Ideally, but in this COVID situation, a lot of people are being pushed out of positions, aren't they? And they don't maybe have the savings, and they don't have the clients, and it's very much backs to the wall, isn't it? I mean,
that's a tough one. Again, when you choose to do this and you're able to comfortably plan for this, it's certainly going to go a lot smoother than if you're thrust into it or forced into it, or you feel like, well, gosh, there's no other option right now. I don't have a job, so I guess I'll try to freelance for a while. And that's not really a commitment. You haven't committed to it. You haven't prepared for it. You haven't put pieces in place to be successful. So that's going to be a lot more challenging. And I feel for those people that are in that situation. Like I said, I started thinking about this 2+ years before I made the move. And that, talked to people, started planning, prepping, making notes, writing down ideas. That really helped out a lot.
And just a comment on the flip side of your situation. So where you are at the moment, you can say no, you can pick and choose clients, and you can say, okay, I want to work on this, and it's fine. But on the other hand, if you're looking to catch up in a job, I speak from experience in sales and going through some tough times with the financial crisis.
Yeah.
The worst thing is desperation.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. So
people
don't
can smell
be
that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a kryptonite. Yeah, it's really the worst situation, and it's like the Matthew principle, isn't it? What for those that have, more shall be given, and for those that have nothing, everything should be taken away. So if you're desperate, if you're working to catch up, if you're catching jobs here and there, it's really a bad situation to be in. But once you have the mindset and you're contented. The clients can feel that, can't they?
Well, as soon as you're pre-offering discounts, for example, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like they're pretty much fine, but you're like, oh, and I'll take 20% off. And they're like, whoa, wait, what? Well, geez, okay. But wow, it's almost saying, going back to imposter syndrome, that they don't believe in the value of their service and or product. Right. And that would scare a professional, a high level client off, I think, in a lot of cases, where they're like, geez, yeah, again, you said desperate, the word desperate. And so when you're pre-offering in, oh, no, I'll give you a discount. Like, they didn't even ask for a discount. Why would you offer a discount if they didn't ask for it?
Yeah. And it's what we would say. It can be a vicious cycle, or it can be self-fulfilling prophecy. What happens is that when you're going well, you have more confidence in your business. You get good feedback. So naturally things will happen. You can afford to say, maybe I'll come back to me, and the clients will come back. But if the success is not there, it's like when the rungs of the ladder fall away in the movie. You just slide down, and it's a bad situation to be in.
On the flip side of that, going back to saying no, when you say no or not now to a client, what that signals is, I'm very successful. I don't need your job, but you know what? Try me again later, and maybe I'll be able to slide you in. And they're like, whoa, gosh, I hope I get the chance to work with that person. So conversely, being able to say no can be actually a positive in that long-term relationship, because now you become the white whale, right? Like, I hope I can really work with that person. They're really busy and hard to get to work with.
Exactly. So if for a situation like that, for somebody who's in business, maybe in this situation, I've been there. I think all salespeople have been there. And I worked for a company during the financial crash in Ireland. And I was selling recruitment advertising before the crash. There was 3% unemployment. During the crash, after the crash, it was 15%. Wow. So, and I was selling recruitment advertising. So you can imagine how desperate I was.
Sure.
Yeah. So for somebody who maybe is in this situation, what advice can you give them? How can how can we steer this ship around?
Well, let's just go back to price versus value versus quality. Your first reaction there is going to be, I need to be the cheapest option out there. But certainly in something like education, in something that is, quality based, like proofreading or editing, where, expectations are pretty high. I don't think being the cheapest option out there is necessarily something that's going to help you if you're looking actually to make this into a long-term career sort of thing. It's only going to hurt you. So yeah, you've got to sort of balance eating today with undercutting yourself and just making the market so bad for yourself that you're scraping by, and you're going to continue scraping by, because it's hard to then say, oh yeah, by the way, I need to charge a lot more than what we were doing before. I'm going to do it at the same level I was doing before. So that's a hard thing for a client to swallow. It's like, wait, what? You did it for that before. Why would you want to be like double or half again now?
And as we've related a few stories today, I can relate one, not my personal story, but a client gave me advice in this situation, and he said he was I won't go into too much detail, but he was an importer, and he was selling his product. He was the first to introduce this particular product to Ireland, maybe about 30, 40 years ago. And he went to one of the largest retailers, and he wasn't getting much change, and they were giving him a hard time, and they're a big client. And he just said, I don't need your business. And that's always stuck with me, to have the courage to do that. But he said, at the end of the day, you don't need the business. You can always walk away.
Well, that's where having a, sort of stable of clients is very important. Have a variety of clients where one is not so important that if you lost them, because then you might as well just have a boss, right?
Sure.
One client is that important. They're going to have that the power dynamic is not going to be in your favor. And they're going to realize that pretty quick and go, look, if you don't do what we want, we're going to pull our business. And you're like, oh, no, no, no. So having a variety of clients where if they threaten you and you're like, well, it was really nice working with you. I hope maybe we could do this again in the future. And they go, wow, okay. Didn't have the power they thought they had.
And sometimes you'll find not just with clients, but with people as well. The way I like to put it is they like to recruit for soap operas.
Huh.
You know what I mean is that they want to get you involved in some kind of drama in their lives. We don't need that.
No, for sure. Like, I actually had a friend pass on a client to me because it was getting too drama laden, and I said I'll take them on, but I said here are my ground rules, and luckily that client followed all that, and we never had a problem. But I think it's because at the beginning I knew what had gone wrong with the previous work relationship, and I said, look, if you contact me to chat about something when I'm busy, I'm gonna have to charge you for that. She's like, oh well, I won't do it then. No problem.
Yeah, exactly. So one more time, we'll talk about Tim's site. So Tim, I've lost actually my piece of paper that I had written on.
TimThompsonELT.com.
There you go. Thank you. I should have a better filing system here. So Tim, how can you be contacted? You're on Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter and all the usual.
Sure, all the regular places. But you could even go to the website and send me a message from there. But just go check out the blog. Not as active as I used to be, but I think there's some good content on there if you're interested. It's all for free, obviously. Link to my book is on there about how to teach presentation skills. Okay. That's something that I put together during one of the slow winter periods because I thought this is something that a lot of teachers get blindsided by their administration when they're like, oh, can you just teach a presentation skills class next semester? And they're like, well, I've never done that before. And the books for that, while they can be okay, they give exercises and activities, but they don't teach the basics of how to teach presentation skills. And that's why I put the book together. So anyone who's interested in learning how to teach presentation skills, the book's for them. Now, it's not a big money maker because it's a very small audience. If you want to make money off books, you have to write them for the students, not for the teachers. So, well, live and learn. But it was a good project, and I'm glad I did that.
And where that's available through your site? It's through Amazon, Barnes and Noble, all the usual places.
I do have some print copies, but it's basically an ebook, so it's very cheap and easy, and quick read too.
How much is it?
Like $5.
$5. Well, there you go. So if you want to teach
coffee
presentations, a cup of coffee in Starbucks, isn't it?
For sure.
Yeah. I don't know how I think it's expensive everywhere, isn't it? So thanks very much again, Tim, for coming on this show today. Tim Thompson, ELT.com and Archer Consulting. And Tim will be in the EFL Magazine Business Podcast group, the Facebook group that we have. So we'll be posting the podcast. Well, you know that already. You're listening to it. So we'll be posting on the site, and we'll have it on through the usual channels. And I'm sure when we post the piece that Tim would be available for a few words if you want to clarify things, or
sure, send in a question.
If you have some business for Tim, I'm sure he'd be more than happy to
try not to say no
and consider it. Yeah, try not to say no. So, Tim, thanks again.
My pleasure. Thanks, Philip.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to the EFL Magazine Business Podcast with Philip Pound. For more great advice and resources, check out EFLmagazine.com. If you found this podcast helpful, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. See you next time.